Spooky salutations! This is Scenes, Screams, and Spooky Themes, a horror movie recap and review podcast.
Each episode, we break down a horror movie piece by piece and also give you our unhinged opinion on it.
Do you believe in second chances? How about the afterlife? Maybe you're just here for Childish Gambino. This week, we're covering the Lazarus Effect.
I'm Eva. Ready?
I'm Jasmine. Set?
And I'm Cody. Action!
Welcome back to Scenes, Screams, and Spooky Theme. How you guys doing?
I'm doing well.
I'm glad one of us is.
I am on a post-birthday mini vacation, so I am doing pretty well.
Awesome.
It is actually going to be kind of fun when we get to the end of my recap script here, because I wrote it at like 1 a.m. because I was watching my partner play video games, because that is what I do on vacation.
Well, I'm excited.
It'll be interesting.
Before we get into things, just had another little getting to know you question. What's your favorite horror movie, Jasmine?
My favorite horror movie is the moment when Shadow is in the pit and he tells Chance and Sassy to go on without him.
I can't believe you've done this to me.
I'm so sorry. It's actually Scream.
Vacation ruined. I need to go cry. How about you, Cody?
My favorite horror movie, I've mentioned my love for it a couple times in the past, but Evil Dead 2 always is going to be near and dear to my heart.
Classic. We covered my favorite horror movie.
Oh,
It
yes,
is
we
The
did.
Host by Bong Joon-ho. But to add in another one, I have a very funny, distinct love for As Above, So Below.
Oh.
It's goofy. It was also really scary when I first watched it, and they were in the Paris catacombs, so what's
Yeah.
not to love?
That really freaked me out when I saw it. Did not like it.
We may, have to wait for, my next birthday, and maybe
Yeah.
that one will come up in rotation. It is my birthday month, so I am picking the movies, and so I chose The Lazarus Effect. It came out in 2015, and so this one is near and dear to my heart, not because it's particularly good, but because I actually saw it in theaters with my sisters, and this was at a time, I brought it up last time, I didn't get into horror until I was in my late teens, so at this point in my life, I was still really afraid of horror movies. They freaked me out. Honestly, to this day, I don't usually go see them in the theater because I get scared. But I did go see this one, and we had a good time. And so now it's comfort horror for me. I really like it, and it has a really good cast for some reason, even though it's not that good.
It's really good, but like the audio, the sound engineering got me on it. I watched this with my mom when it first came out. So it was a very unserious moment, but it did frighten little me.
Yeah, it's teen horror, really. Yeah. Did you have any first thoughts on it, Cody?
Yeah, this is my first time seeing the movie. I remember seeing trailers for it when it first came out and hearing about it, and yeah, it just kind of fell off the face of the earth after it initially released. So I think that probably should have told me something. I enjoyed it. Like, is it, objectively the greatest movie? No, but I think it's perfectly fine. I actually thought it was pretty good. Nothing I want to say completely original, but the cast is very enjoyable. I love Mark Duplass, so he was great to see. Yeah, the cast was like more than I was expecting. Like, everyone in there was kind of a big name.
To me, this movie is such a snapshot of 2015, the fashion, the cast, the concept, like trying to do something original, and yet somehow it is not at all. So in that aspect as well, it's really fun for me to revisit and be like, we really did wear like 3 shirts layered on top of each other and call it fashion.
I can't believe we did that. It did not look good. What were we thinking?
Clashing colors. Oh man. But without further ado, shall we get into our recap so that we can tear this movie to shreds? I mean, discuss the film.
Do it.
I'm gonna defend it.
Oh. Everything I say about this movie, please just remember I do love it and I will be watching this movie for the rest of my life. So, The Lazarus Effect. It was released on February 27th, 2015, directed by David Gelb. We open on a research video. It's labeled laz.prj_pig. The video is in grainy black and white. There is a dead pig on an operating table hooked up to some equipment. It's not super in focus. We can't see exactly what is hooked up where. There's a pig and there's equipment. Someone comments that it smells bad. The voices of a few people are reading levels of something, chemicals in the brain. There is a shit ton of fake science in this movie, and I'm gonna skip over a bunch of it because it doesn't make any sense and it's not important. And so then they move on to what they're calling Event 1. The pig on the table jerks reflexively as we hear the sound of a surge of electricity, but then nothing happens. They give another injection and try again. Event 2. The pig jumps again. The video stutters, but still nothing. Someone jokes that they should have a luau. As a woman's voice objects, the pig suddenly jumps and squeals. Its eyes shine from the camera light. The people yell in confusion, but it stops. Still again. The video focuses, and we see the pig clearly now. It's still. Someone says, nothing. The luau joker yells, nothing my ass. It jumped off the table. And someone else says, it still doesn't work.
It was just a figment of their imagination.
Yeah, not like it was caught on video or anything.
No.
And so then we cut to the opening credits and we get some fun, science-y visuals. There's this black goo that's kind of gooing around and then it gets all spiky. Like, I don't know if you've seen that, like magnetic goo. You hold up a magnet to it and it gets
Yeah,
little
the
spikes.
ferrofluid, I think is what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I used to love that stuff.
So it looks exactly like that, and I would be shocked to find out it's not what they used. And so it's moving around, it's consuming things. There's like these gross meat shots while the goo moves all over everything. It's just gross looking.
The evil science goop.
We see the Lazarus Effect. So we are in Berkeley, California at St. Paternus University. I didn't look it up, but I don't think that's real. I'm from California. I've never heard of it. There's an aerial shot of just your typical college campus. We see two women enter a building. Dr. Zoe McConnell, played by Olivia Wilde, and Ava, this is going to be hard for me because it's not Eva, it's Ava, but spelled the same way, played by Sarah Bolger. And so Zoe is dressed like a scientist. She has her blazer on with her hair up, no nonsense. And Ava is, wearing multiple colorful shirts and very long, dangly necklaces. This is kind of how they will be dressed for the remainder of the film to give you a vibe. The women pass a security guard who recognizes Zoe as having access, and she says that Ava is with her. She uses a key card to get into an elevator. Zoe explains that they are working under a grant, so Ava will need to sign an NDA. She introduces her two other team members, Nico, played by Donald Glover, also known as Childish Gambino, and Clay, played by Evan Peters. What?
Surprise! I completely forgot all who was in this movie. So I went into it this time, like, not knowing. I didn't want to know who was in it. And then I was like, wait, Olivia Wilde? Evan Peters? Childish Gambino? What's happening here?
And they're all really great actors, but I
Yeah.
remember when I saw this in theaters, I did not know who Evan Peters or Donald Glover were. I didn't recognize them for anything. If memory serves, like they hadn't really been in anything huge yet that I had seen anyways. And so when I revisited the movie later, because I was finally brave enough to rewatch it, I was like, what? And also, yeah, what a pair. Those two specifically, they're really good. Like, they have a really great dynamic in this. And I need to see if they've acted in anything else together because they had really good chemistry.
Yeah.
They played like the nerd duo spectacularly.
They did. Yeah.
Every time they were on screen together, it was fun.
Hate to see one without the other. That's how good they were. So Ava is here to do some video work. She does an interview with Zoe and her partner Frank Walton, played by Mark Duplass. A couple months ago, I decided to attempt to binge watch all of the Mindy Project in a month. I was not successful, but Mark Duplass has a recurring character on that show. And so then when I saw him, for some reason, this was the first time, despite having seen the movie at least 8 times by now, this was the first time I put it together. I was like, wait a second, I know this guy. And then, of course, he has an even more famous horror role.
And that's immediately where my brain was like, oh my god, that's the guy from Creep. And I couldn't take him so seriously anymore. It was like, that guy is a weird man. I don't trust him.
Yeah, there was definitely some whiplash seeing him play just a normal guy and not a complete weirdo like he
Yeah.
does in Creep 2, which
Oh my god.
he does so well. He's so good as this creepy guy.
He really is.
I don't know why I had forgotten about Creep because I knew just the Mindy Project was burned into my brain. But then, yeah, he shows up and I was like, wait a second. So, yeah, Mark Duplass, really great actor, but only at being a weirdo.
Yeah.
So the two immediately break. They're laughing. He makes fun of her for using a Kelly Ripa voice. They start over and start describing their project. They're very awkward together, but they're also kind of cute. I kind of liked their chemistry.
They work.
We cut to Ava editing this footage, but it's seamless because we, the audience, are getting this info. We only cut to her editing to move time along. Basically, Zoe used tumors to stimulate nerve growth, creating a serum with it. Then Nico put together a large Millennium Falcon looking machine that uses timed electrical pulses to activate the serum. We see images of the white, thick serum. I know what I said. Jumping kind of like the black one we saw in the title credits as it receives the electrical pulses. Then they stimulate parts of the brain with more electrical pulses to jumpstart neural reactions. The serum is inserted into the temporal lobe with a special arm with a large needle attached to the machine, and then they flip a large electrical switch to finish the process. The goal is to extend the time you have to resuscitate someone, to give healthcare providers more time to save someone, to give people a second chance with no cognitive or long-term effects. Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, why not?
What could go wrong?
Cut to Clay and Nico playing Settlers of Catan and friendly bickering. Ava asks them about cell phone service, and Nico replies they don't really get any in this sub-basement, but there's a landline. She declines and walks away. Clay remarks to Nico about how hot she is, and Nico says she has a name. Clay doesn't care. He asks if Nico would tap that. Nico says she's alright, but he's looking past Ava at Zoe.
Wow.
Clay calls him ridiculous.
He might be. You never know.
I mean, she's clearly with Mark, so
Yeah.
You might want to give up for your own good, buddy.
Yeah.
Cut to Zoe and Frank watching Ava do more interviews with Clay and Nico. They think she'll be a good addition. Frank teases Zoe by calling Ava super sexy, and she kicks at him, saying he's fired. He kisses her cheek and says, I love you. There's your confirmation right there. Those two are together. Cut to night. Zoe puts on some opera music on a record player. I'm sorry, but it really is giving Evil Scientist.
Oh, I was so alarmed when that music started playing. I was like, what is happening? Why?
Who listens to opera when they're trying to focus? I don't know.
Hannibal Lecter?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's never a good look. Like, it always just makes you look nuts.
Mm-hmm.
There's no shaking it.
It's one of those really famous songs. I thought about trying to sing it to make you guys laugh, but then I realized that was probably a really bad idea.
Thank you for not doing it.
So Zoe is turning off equipment, closing up the lab. Then she puts on some gloves and starts working on something. We see her put a substance in a centrifuge. Security footage shows everyone else has left the building. Zoe studies her computer screen. The music stops. Zoe looks over her shoulder and we see a figure shadowed in the darkness. Someone has stopped the record player, but she is looking in the wrong direction and she can't see it. She turns the other way and is startled by a pig face right next to her. To make the viewer jump, there is also a loud squeal. Cheap jump scare number 1.
Very. I didn't jump.
It freaked me the fuck out that first time in the theater. I remember. I'm used to it now, though.
I was like, whoa, that's such a big difference in the sound, because I had the TV pretty low.
But yeah, that squeal can't be real because it's actually just Nico in a mask. He lifts it and apologizes, saying he shouldn't have done that, and they both laugh. Cut to them eating sushi and having a casual conversation, reminiscing on some scenario where all we know is that Nico didn't know what a dental dam was. Neither did I, so actually.
The more you know.
Do you want to tell the audience in case they don't know?
Audience, in case you don't know, I believe this is not a thing that is regularly used anymore, but yeah, so she jokes that they were 22, so he should have known by then it wasn't something that dentists use. It is actually something to protect you from STDs as you give oral sex to, I think it's specifically for female genitalia.
Yes.
So there you go.
The more you know.
The only important thing here is that now we know they've known each other for a while. I don't know how old they are, but clearly they're established scientists by now working on this project. So I would guess at least late 20s, early 30s. But also, Donald Glover looks so young in this.
He does look really young. It's hard to tell.
He looks so much younger than her. I'm glad that they had to put something in there, be like, no. They're like the same age, because I wouldn't have guessed it. I would have guessed hot for teacher, and that's not it. Nico changes the subject and asks how she's doing. With Frank, she cautiously answers good, but their wedding was pushed back when they got this grant, and that was 3 years ago. Frank is obsessed with finishing the work. Nico probes that maybe the universe is saying something, and she replies, yeah, to finish the work. She thanks him for the food, and he leaves her to continue working.
3 years.
It's a long time and not a long time, all at the same
Yeah.
time. Like, it makes sense that this research is taking that long, but is that really how long you want to put your wedding on hold?
Yeah.
Cut to Zoe in bed, dreaming. We see a long red hallway with doors on both sides. 2 dolls sit in the middle and they catch fire. A young girl turns away in fear. At the end of the hall, people pound on a door, screaming. Smoke is pouring out from the crack beneath the door, and we can see the orange light of flames. Hands, burnt black, burst from underneath the door, along with a high-pitched scream, and Zoe jolts awake, gasping. She holds her necklace to her chest. It's a cross. We see Zoe out in the living room, playing with her necklace. Frank comes out to check on her and asks if it was the same dream. She nods, and he apologizes and pats her head, letting her know he'll be in bed waiting for her when she's ready. She thanks him, and he leaves. He pauses before he goes into the bedroom, looking at her. She's looking away and has her necklace pressed to her mouth. I don't know about you. When I've had a bad dream, I'm like, cuddle me, I feel bad. I know everyone is different and they probably have this dynamic worked out, but I was like, couldn't be me.
Yeah, usually if it's enough to wake me up and I'm still a little rattled by it, I kind of just, come here, you're going to be hugged now.
Exactly.
And then I fall back asleep a little bit later.
Everyone's different, though. Cut to a video of a swirling mass. It's pretty uniform until suddenly it starts falling apart. They talk science about the problem, and Clay is smoking on a vape pen. Zoe calls him out for it, and he doesn't care. She calls him a jerk. They keep talking about this problem of whatever this is falling apart instead of staying uniform, until suddenly Clay chokes on his vape. He manages to choke out a solution, yelling, "Boom!" as they stare at him. He asks if he has shit on his face. Frank replies that he thinks that'll work. They rejoice, praising Clay. Frank jokes that he's all grown up. Nico jokes that he can smoke in here now. Zoe says no, but she's clearly swept up in the happy excitement as well.
Can't even eat in the lab.
No.
Or drink.
Vape pen. They also call it smoking the whole time, and I'm like, nah, it's worse.
What sterile environment?
Yeah, we don't need that.
Maybe that was causing the problem in the first place.
Yeah. Not enough stuff.
Just kidding. They did give some kind of fake science answer, but I mean, I'm not a scientist, but if I asked one, I'm sure they'd say it doesn't make any sense. Their new subject is a large dog, strapped down and hooked up to the equipment on the table. Zoe notes cataracts in his eyes, likely the reason he was put down. Zoe and Clay comment on the various levels of whatever they're reading. Clay has these funny high-tech goggles where he can apparently see levels of things and also gets a thermal view, even though like when you look it's just goggles that have lights on them.
Man, science in 2015.
Yeah, they never explained the magic goggles that he's got.
No.
Like,
You know why he got goggles? Because he's the Flash.
Oh, because he's so fast.
That guy's called the Flash too, right? There's two Flashes, right?
No, he's Quicksilver.
Quicksilver!
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I don't want to be embarrassed by this. You know why he gets goggles? Because he's
You
Quicksilver.
can't do that.
I didn't follow X-Men.
Yeah. He actually, I think at one point he is wearing a Flash shirt, which is interesting because
Oh, yeah.
Marvel's answer to the Flash is Quicksilver, which this was in 2015, so I don't think he had played Quicksilver yet,
No, not yet.
but funny to see.
They predicted the future.
Hell yeah. So we can hear a heart rate monitor giving the flatline tone. We see Zoe take off her jewelry, her ring, and her necklace and place them in a petri dish. She prepares to pull the lever on the machine, counting down. The electricity surges, but there's no change. The flatline continues. They up the voltage and prepare to go again. No response again. Through her camera, Ava sees the dog's ears and nose twitch. She calls out that she thinks the dog moved. She tries to explain, but Zoe comments it was probably muscle stimulation. They sigh, and Zoe removes the arm from the dog's head. Nico crouches down to look in his face. Frank and Zoe share a disappointed look. Suddenly, the dog jumps to life, growling and barking, scaring everyone, especially Nico, who falls over. They manage to calm the dog down, and then share looks of awe and excitement. Cut to someone shining a light in the dog's eyes. They are 6 minutes post-experiment, and he's still doing well. Zoe notices that his cataracts are gone. They were stage 5, so that's weird. Zoe asks if it could be the serum. Clay jokes that maybe they cured blindness. Frank says that everyone needs to keep quiet until they know exactly what they have here, given the unexpected success and the side effect. Nico and Clay agree. Zoe and Frank are going to take the dog, who's named Rocky, home to watch him. Also, I was watching this on Amazon Prime, and I was very excited and pleased to see, like, when I pressed pause as I was writing my script, that the dog was properly credited, popped up on the side of actors in the scene, and his name is Kato.
Well, that's cute. That's sweet.
I don't know anything else about Kato.
He's in one other film. He's in a show, but he's not credited.
That's right, you looked it up. That's a
Yeah,
crime.
I did look that up.
I gotta say, when I say stacked cast, I'm including Kato. He did a very good job here. He deserves all credits in all things. We see the team pop a bottle of champagne, celebrating. Even Ava puts down her camera and joins in. They play upbeat music that echoes down the halls of the otherwise empty building. We get a close-up of one of the security cameras, catching it all. Cut to Zoe and Frank's home. Zoe's trying to feed Rocky, but he isn't interested. Frank calls him the ultimate underdog. Zoe notes that Rocky is acting a little weird. Frank reasons that he might be in shock. It'll probably take a few days for his brain to go back to normal. Zoe agrees, but seems to be holding something back. After a little prodding, she admits that she's unsure about this. What if Rocky had been in doggy heaven? He didn't get a say in if he wanted to come back. The two chuckle. Frank says the wine has brought out her Catholic background. Zoe just says that if they're going to ask big questions, they need to be prepared for big answers. Frank tries to reassure her that it will all be worth it because they're going to help a lot of people. They touch foreheads, partners through and through. Cut to Frank working at his desk. Rocky is laying on the ground, head down, just looking. We see Zoe asleep in bed, only a sheet covering her lower body. And how did that sheet get to be so form-fitting? It is clinging to her legs, and I was like, sheets don't do that.
Like maybe she was a little wet. They spritzed her with some water.
I was literally imagining, like, whoever was setting up the scene, like, literally, like, getting on top of her and, like, tucking in her legs. You're like, all right, watch out. Tuck, tuck. Your idea is probably nicer and more accurate. The door creaks open. We see Rocky, now on the bed. He slowly walks up from Zoe's feet to looking over her face, watching. And he's such a good actor. He doesn't
He's
even
so
look up at his
good.
trainer or nothing. Good boy.
Very impressed.
I do have a background in animal training. I went to zookeeper school at one point, fun fact, and also met people who train studio animals. So there's not really much to say that I can speculate on in this movie, but yeah, in future movies where we see animals acting, if I see something where I'm like, this is probably what the trainer did, expect to hear that from me because I'm a huge nerd about animal training.
It's an aspect that I think a lot of people don't consider.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for this specific scene, Rocky would have just learned an A to B. So going from point A to point B and learning to look at her face. And, to do that, all he had to do was stand with his head down, something that he probably already knew. It's a common behavior that's used in a lot of different aspects. Just have your head down and hold that position and then reward that. So that's all he had to do. Good boy.
He did it good.
The next day in the lab, Ava is trying to play with Rocky, but he shows no interest in the ball. Once again, good boy, you ignore that ball. She asks the team if they think he remembers dying. Clay says dogs don't have memories. Nico says they do. They start to squabble, and then the two get up to go look it up. Clay may be a little stupid. Of course dogs have memory.
Yeah, you're crazy.
Ava asks Rocky if he saw a big white light. Frank notes that part is actually true. He explains that the brain floods your system with DMT at the moment of death, which is a potent psychedelic. This is probably an explanation for why people say they see a light or the Blessed Virgin Mary. He does the sign of the cross. Zoe chuckles and he asks if he did it right, and she says no. The point is that Frank says it's all just a big trip at that moment of death. Zoe disagrees. Frank tells Ava that they've had this discussion before. Zoe thinks you can't dismiss stories from near-death experiences because of one theory. Frank thinks it's smarter to bet on science than a cute story like the pearly gates. Zoe argues that the soul is neural impulses, therefore energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed, and that's science. So her theory is that the DMT is there to help souls move on, open a door, so to speak. Frank jokingly questions if it's like a doorman then, if you should tip him on the way out. Zoe thinks it's arrogant to sum up the moment of death in one chemical equation. They simply don't know. Frank replies, yet. I don't know, you guys. Do you think that it's DMT that explains those near-death experiences? Or do you think it's more?
I think it's more.
I like to think it's more.
I'm a little conflicted. I grew up with a religious background, so like part of it's always going to kind of be speaking the quiet voice in the back of my head, but I've also kind of developed a certain skepticism as I've gotten older. So I would like to think it's a bit of both.
For me, it's about the hope. I hope there's something.
Yeah, I'll be bored if I'm just laying around doing nothing.
Exactly. Cut to Rocky in an MRI. The team is reading, once again, more levels that they don't explain, and things seem normal until they notice that the serum is still in his bloodstream. It was supposed to dissipate within hours. There's also crazy levels of brain activity. Clay questions if they're sure they want to keep the dog in their house. They ask why. He says one of the symptoms of hypothyroidism is extreme aggression. He says the dog could go Cujo at any moment. Cujo shout out! Zoe and Frank share a look, but don't say anything. We see some lingering images of the brain scan before cutting to... Clay is vaping again, and he puts some jazz on the record player.
You like jazz? I'm sorry, I had to do it.
I should have seen it coming.
I thought it out loud the second that scene came on, so
Me
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
So Clay has put on his jazz. Yes, he likes jazz. He does a little dance and then looks at Rocky in his crate. They're going to call this thing a cage the whole time, but I am pro dog crating, so I'm going to call it a crate. This isn't the kind of crate that I would probably use. I use something a little bit bigger with more open mesh, but yeah, it's just a big dog crate, like for travel. Anyways, he obnoxiously blows smoke into the crate. Rocky whines. I'm immediately like, kill this man, Rocky.
That
Do
was
it.
so rude.
Who does that?
Don't blow smoke in animals' faces. It's not good for them.
Oh,
Also, kind of a dick move.
big time.
Especially when they can't get away from it. He does a little, it's alive bit, before walking away. A post-it on the crate reads, "Do not feed Rocky." Clay opens the fridge and grabs a drink and some chips, and then goes to his desk on the lab floor to play World of Warcraft. He tells the screen, "You're my friend," and takes a swig of his drink before he's startled by a loud crash. The record player stops. He yells, "Shit!" and looks to the door. A can rolls by. He calls, "Nico?" Then gets up to investigate. The kitchen is covered in food. The fridge is open and empty. Clay looks at the mess in horror and then whirls to look at the crate. It's open and Rocky is gone. He hears the dog groan and then goes out to the lab floor, whistling and calling his name. And he also calls him a little shit. Clay is really racking up the bad points with me. He hears growling under the operating table, which is on a slightly raised platform and covered by a floor-length sheet. He tells Rocky, "It's okay, you're just freaking out." He goes to the table and lifts the sheet. Nothing. As he gets up, Rocky is on the table and barks at him. "Jump scare!" Clay falls down the few stairs of the platform. Rocky growls. As Clay looks up, Rocky is gone. Clay pants in fear, looking around. Rocky is suddenly in his face again, snarling. He attempts to calm the dog down. And I don't know how he got out of this, because we cut to Clay in the kitchen telling Zoe that he thinks they should put Rocky down. Ava and Nico are cleaning up the mess. Zoe thinks Clay is overreacting. Clay argues that something is wrong with the dog. It's like he was possessed. Nico asks how long he is out of the room, and he says only 20 seconds tops. Ava holds up a bag of chips. She says that it was on the top shelf, so even if Clay had left the cage open, there's no way Rocky could have reached them. Clay pointedly looks at Zoe, who looks at Rocky, who's back in his crate. The dog stares back. Cut to a thermal video of Rocky, followed by footage of the successful experiment. Frank is narrating their findings. He says phase 1 of development was being resuscitated by the LAZ-510 serum and electrical stimulation. Phase 2 was that the serum remained in the bloodstream longer than expected. Phase 3, metabolic functions have caused a disruptive hormonal imbalance as the subject seems confused, has no appetite, and is aggressive. And now is Phase 4. The brain is creating new neural pathways at an unprecedented and alarming rate. He puts down his recorder, focused and confused. Frustrated? There's a lot going on in this guy's head. Zoe comes up from behind him and gives him a hug, spooking him. They laugh. She asks if he's coming to bed. He replies that he's in the middle of something, but will be there in a minute. Zoe gives his neck a kiss and leaves. Frank presses a hand to his head and asks aloud, "What the hell is going on here?" He watches a video of Rocky laying calmly in his crate. Cut to the next day. Zoe, Frank, and Rocky are entering their lab building. Frank is stopped by a security guard. The dean needs to talk to him. Cut to Frank in the dean's office. She's in the middle of asking if he ever considered the implications of this. He stares. She continues that the majority of their students, and more importantly donors, identify as religious. He says not to play the religious card, that has nothing to do with this. She cuts him off, saying he was the one who did an unsanctioned experiment in violation of the review board and his grant agreement. They were supposed to be studying new methods of arresting neural decay in coma patients. So that makes a lot more sense to me than what they're doing now.
Oh yeah. There's no way you could get approval for something to bring back the dead or push off the process of dying like that.
Saving coma patients? Yeah, they're alive. We can keep them alive. It would be great if that was a resource. But yeah, this kind of goes to explain. Okay, so you thought this was ridiculous? It is! They were never supposed to be doing it.
Yep.
Frank says that's how it started, but accidents in the lab lead to new discoveries. She should understand. She's a doctor too, and science works by adapting. She says he's not adapting, he's playing God with dead animals. He should have known this was coming. Frank is thinking. He asks how she knows all this. She shouldn't have known about the trials. She says they have the right to review material on their own server, including video. He calls bullshit. Someone must have fed her this to get the project shut down. Was it Big Pharma? Did someone make a donation? Who? We see several large white vans pull up outside. Men in uniforms get out with plastic tubs. One man in a gray suit appears to be in charge. Once again, according to Amazon Prime, because I paused it, this man is named Mr. Wallace. They never say it, but that is what I will call him. And he is played by Ray Wise, probably most famously known for his role in Twin Peaks. Once again,
yeah.
the hell is up with this cast? He's here for not very long, and he's incredible. The team looks up in confusion as the men enter their lab. They begin taking everything, with Mr. Wallace giving instructions. Zoe asks what this is. Mr. Wallace condescendingly shakes her hand, saying he's a big fan of her work. Another man hands her papers, saying effective immediately, their research belongs to a pharmaceutical company. All right, so disclaimer here. They say some names of some companies here, and I just scratched them because it's not important, and I don't like fake pharma names because they all sound so weird.
They are weird.
Anyways, bear with me. I hope this still makes sense. Clay angrily grabs his laptop from a man, saying it's personal property. Ava grabs Rocky and leaves with him. So he says they're working under a grant funded by a different company. Mr. Wallace replies that as of 2 hours ago, their company became a principal shareholder of the other one. The other man replies that the grant says that if there is a violation of IACUC review board standards, ownership is negated and given to the holding corporation. So I do want to give a little context here. I do know a little bit about IACUC, and I know they didn't do their research because nobody calls it that.
It sounds so wrong.
It sounds wrong. It's called IACUC, okay? So, not to get into a complicated subject of animal research, but if you don't know anything about it, here is a little bit of context. IACUC exists. It is a committee. The letters stand for Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. So there are scientists on board. There are also impartial people who aren't scientists on board, and they decide if a research project can actually use animals for the next step of their research. They look at things like if the project is ready, if the project even needs to do animal trials, and also what animals are allowed to be used. So you can't jump straight to things like dogs if that's not warranted. So they are saying that the IACUC told them not to do this, but they did it anyways. And I'm guessing they were kind of able to circumvent it because these are dead animals, so no one's paying that close attention. But anyways, they just yell out this line, and I was like, okay, well, no one understands what that means. So hopefully that makes some sense. Mr. Wallace tells Zoe that while this must be difficult for them, there's a lesson to be learned. There's always a consequence for breaking the rules. His face is shadowed and threatening as he stares her down and says this. Then he smiles. Cut to Frank running into the lab. The team sits in the lab, which has been gutted. Frank asks what happened. Zoe says they took everything. They're all crushed. Cut to Zoe and Frank's home. Zoe is telling Ava that it's quite the coincidence that as soon as she showed up and started taping, everything was taken.
That's kind of rude.
Frank says it's not her fault. They had her keep everything in the lab. Zoe says they lost everything. Their lives, reputations, work, 4 years gone. What happened? Clay asks if they wanted the serum so bad, why not hire the team? Frank explains that the company probably heard about the serum, realized it was a gold mine, saw who funded it, then bought out that company, and left an anonymous call to the review board, and boom, everything is theirs and they don't have to split any profits. Nico scoffs. Why would they spend $50 million for the serum? Frank declares that they're going to duplicate the experiment. Nico asks if he's joking. Frank says that if they walk away, they have nothing. They'll never be able to prove it was them that discovered this. The lab won't get cleaned until the next day, so they have roughly 12 hours to break in, duplicate the experiment with Ava filming, and then they'll be able to take back their work. Zoe gets up in a hurry. Clay asks how they'll do this if the company took all the serum. Zoe pulls out a bag of serum from a lunch pail. Safe
It's a
place.
good hiding spot. Never think to look there.
She says they kept some, just in case. Frank says they know security, which is a joke. This is doable. Nico asks how they'll get in. They don't have any key cards anymore. Ava reveals that she still has a temporary key card. Zoe smiles. It's heist time! Cut to Ava walking Rocky up to the building that night. She flashes her pass and tells the security guard a doctor wanted her to bring in Rocky for overnight observation. She's being a little flirty, and so he just kind of goes back to reading. This all seems normal to him. Crazy students. Ava opens a gate at the loading dock and lets in the rest of the team. Frank tells her she'll get expelled or worse if she gets caught here, so she can leave if she wants. She replies, I know, and then shuts the gate. Sassy.
Good for her.
The team enters their lab and begins setting up. Ava puts Rocky in his crate in the kitchen. Zoe pulls out the serum. Nico has access to the security camera feed and tells Zoe the system is shitty. Zoe asks if they can loop the footage, like on TV. He says he'll just stop it from recording. The guard won't notice. Zoe says that works and walks away. He calls after her, "You're amazing, Nico." And she turns and smiles, repeating, "You're amazing, Nico." He may have asked for this compliment, but it makes him smile like a smitten boy regardless. He murmurs, "Thank you, Zoe. My boy.
Sometimes that's what it takes. If somebody won't give it to you.
You deserve better, my boy." Clay is in the freezer. He pulls out another frozen dog specimen. We see the dog strapped down on the table the same way Rocky was before. In his crate, Rocky barks. Ava is recording. They do all their science checks, crazy goggles, reading levels. Everything is looking good like the first time. The guard is still at his station. Frank says, "Let's make some history. Again," and asks Zoe if she'd like to do the honors. She counts down to the first electrical event. 3, 2, 1. As she flips the switch, the electricity goes out. Sparks fly from the switch. Our POV is on the pit bull on the table, but you can make out as Zoe's body falls, accompanied by a loud thud. The rest of the team isn't sure what happened. Somebody must have flipped the breaker. Lights begin to come back on, and Frank sees Zoe. He runs to her in a panic. No pulse. She was electrocuted. Frank starts CPR. They grab adrenaline, and Frank plunges it into her heart. No pulse. They grab a defibrillator. Okay. Remember in Final Destination where I was like, don't pull out things that are stabbing you? This is my other one. You can't shock someone back to life if they don't have a heartbeat.
They gotta have a little something.
There has to be some type of activity in order for the shock to work. So TV has lied to you your whole life if you thought that's how this works.
From what I understand, it basically resets your heart rate a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Which means it has to be doing something in the first place in order to work. So even if you're like using an AED, which you hook up to the person and it'll deliver the shock for you because you're not a doctor. If it reads no activity, it'll tell you to just keep doing CPR in hopes that something comes back. Because if it shocks a person with no activity, nothing will happen. Fun facts. They rip open her shirt and give her a shock at 200 joules. No response. Frank tells Clay to get another ready at 360. Clay says that's too high. Frank doesn't care. Ava watches in fear, looking almost sick. Nico is clutching his head with one hand, almost in tears. Another shock. Nothing. Zoe's eyes are open and bloodshot, her head shaking with the CPR compressions, which Frank is now delivering way too fast. He's crying and saying, "Come on." The team is crying, looking away, covering their faces. Cut to Frank sitting on the floor with Zoe's body. She is so fucking skinny. I couldn't help but think to myself as she's laying there on the floor, that's not natural. He holds her hand and notices the charred skin around her ring. It was the cause of the electrocution. He pulls it off her finger. She lays serene. He picks her up. Clay notices Frank laying Zoe on the table. The rest of the team begin to protest, knowing what he's thinking. Frank says there's nothing to talk about. They know the serum works. Clay asks what if she comes back messed up like Rocky? Frank says that won't happen. They can adjust the levels. Nico says he wants her back too, but if the police come, they're gonna go to jail. Frank doesn't care about the police. Ava says this isn't a lab experiment, it's a person. He growls, "I know," but she continues saying that he's talking about bringing someone back from the dead. He says they've done it before. It'll work. Ava doesn't give up, saying this is crossing a line. Frank tells them to go then. He'll do it himself. He can't lose her like this. The team watches. Nico is the first to give in, silently climbing the platform to help. Clay follows. Frank thanks them. Ava and Frank make eye contact. He tells her he needs her to pull the switch. She nods after a moment and also comes up to help. Peer pressure. Frank inserts the arm into Zoe's head. He asks Nico if they're good. The equipment is damaged, but at Frank's insistence, he concedes that they're good. They start the heart rate monitor, which plays the flatline tone. Frank says, "Here we go," and counts down for Ava, who has removed her jewelry and is wearing rubber gloves.
I did like the very visually distinct precautions that she was taking afterwards. I thought that was, I don't think it was supposed to be humorous, but I thought it was really funny.
Yeah, it's like, we're not fucking this up again.
Because initially she just took off her jewelry, there were no rubber gloves, but just the act was just nah, not gonna chance it.
I gotta be safe.
I mean, yeah, if all she's doing is holding that switch and it electrocuted her, they should have had way more precautions in place in the first place.
Yeah, also how little insulation is in that switch.
It's pure metal, I guess, baby.
Yeah.
She pulls the switch and electricity surges. Zoe's body jerks, but no response. Frank says they go again, at a voltage that Nico says is too high. Frank insists, and Nico sets the machine and walks away. They deliver the second event, but Clay still doesn't read a response. From where Nico has wandered to, he sees on the computer monitor that the security guard has gotten up. Frank wants to go again, but the guard is coming. Frank convinces him that they can't help Zoe if they're in jail. They switch off the lights and cover up her body with a sheet. The team hides as they hear the guard approach. He pauses outside the room, but then leaves without coming in. Frank gets up to check. The guard is gone. As he turns back, he sees Zoe sitting up on the table, still covered by the sheet. Nico and Clay look in fear. Frank approaches her and slowly pulls the sheet off. She has a blank look on her face. He brushes her hair back and calls to her, then asks Ava for a blanket. As he's calling directions to her, Zoe grabs his wrist. She dry swallows and looks at him with wide eyes, asking hoarsely, "Did I just die?" Cut to a close-up on the small wound on the side of her head where the arm had been inserted. It's swabbed with a Q-tip and then covered with a small band-aid. Frank checks her eyes with a flashlight. He smiles and says she's good. She smiles back. From further back in the room, Ava asks, "What was it like?" Rude.
Give her a minute.
This is not the time or the
Yeah,
place.
give her some space.
She's had a rough day.
A real rough day.
God. It's one thing to ask the dog.
Yeah, we're all curious, but like, give her so little space.
Zoe stares at her. She presses. "Did you see anything?" We see an image of White, Zoe's form, not in focus, screaming. A hazy image of that red smoky hallway. We see Zoe's face, staring, hard to read. Frank cuts off Ava, saying it isn't the time, and then gives orders to pack up. They'll do the MRI and then get out ASAP. Zoe finally looks away from Ava, blinking. Nico watches the guard pack up and says they're clear. Frank says, "Let's get this over with." We see Zoe in the MRI and the team looking at the scans. Clay gives a big sigh and says, "That's not right." He asks Frank to come take a look and notes that not only is her body almost completely healed, there's too much neural activity. Frank says they'll get her out and retest in an hour to give the serum time to dissipate. Clay reminds him that the serum still hasn't dissipated in Rocky. Frank says that was a dog and she's a person. Clay is upset and walks off. Ava asks Nico what's going on. He asks her if she knows about how humans only use 10% of their brain. She says she thought that was a myth. He replies that the myth is that we don't know what the other 90% is doing. Humans use 100% of their brain, just 10% at a time.
I feel like we're using it all of the time. 100%, even if it doesn't feel like we are.
I don't know the science. I doubt they know the science. Because they do concede that the whole use 10% of your brain thing is a myth. But I don't know about that second part. I thought that we determined that we use a lot of our brain, usually.
Yeah.
So I did look this one up as part of some of like the little fun factoids behind the movie. The using 10% of your brain part is proven to be a complete farce. That is not true. That is a myth portrayed by media. The truth of it is we're using all parts of our brain, kind of no matter what we're doing. Some parts are just a little bit more active than others.
That makes sense.
Depending on what you're doing.
Okay, so they kind of got it right, but not really.
The way he describes it kind of makes it sound it's like only 10% at any one time is lighting up. Like, you know, you're walking down a long hallway and you're turning off the last light switch before you get into a new one type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is not really the case. Your whole brain is, you know, firing, you know, neurons, and there is brain activity across the entire thing. Just if you're really focused on something, a particular part that is associated with, you know, memory or pattern recognition might light up a little bit more brightly.
So you're telling me I'll never be Lucy?
I'm so sorry, girl.
I'm sorry to say.
So, by this logic that Nico has explained, only a small portion of Zoe's brain should be lighting up on the scan as she's just laying there, not doing anything, but her entire brain is lit up. Frank takes Zoe and sits her down on the kitchen couch. He asks how she is, and she wonders if they should be at the hospital. He says they have all the same equipment, and he's the most qualified to take care of her. Hospital's doctors wouldn't understand. He just wants to get her stable first. Zoe is kind of rocking back and forth and looking like she's going to cry. Frank takes her face in his hands and puts their foreheads together, then gives her forehead a kiss. He says he thought he had lost her. She replies that he did. He grins and says, "But I didn't." He gives back her engagement ring, but her finger is still injured. He instead threads it onto the chain of her cross necklace. He says this is the one time he goes Catholic, and she laughs. She thanks him, and he says it's good to hear her laugh again. As he moves to put the necklace on her, Zoe hears his voice echoing, "Something's definitely wrong." She gasps and moves back, staring at him in fear. She asks what he just said, and he says that he didn't say anything. She looks over at a pen on the table, and it moves on its own to point at her. Frank asks if she's okay, and she says she thinks she's just tired. He starts saying, "You've been through," and she cuts in, saying in sync with him, "a traumatic experience," in a low voice, like she's in a trance. Frank looks at her in shock as she continues. "You need to let your body heal. Take it easy. I'll be right outside the door." He stands up and stares at her. Zoe blinks, her face and tone returning to normal. She asks, "What?" He says, "Nothing," and that he'll check on her in a few minutes. As he leaves, Zoe calls after him, "I love you." He stops and says it back, but as he exits, he looks very disturbed. Zoe is left on her own, her smile fading. She looks at the pen again and hears eerie whispers as it rolls on its own. She concentrates, and it rolls off the table. She pants in fear and effort. The overlapping whispers are getting louder, and she looks around. She sees Ava in the lab. A high-pitched ringing fades into Ava's voice saying, "She shouldn't be here. They killed someone. This isn't right." Zoe stares at Clay next. He's thinking that this is such a bad idea, especially considering that the serum is still in the dog's brain. Nico is talking to Frank, but thinking, "We can't cover this up. That's not Zoe. They shouldn't have brought her back." Frank is thinking he needs more time. There's something very wrong with her, but he's determined to fix it. Zoe stares at him, almost glaring, as his voice continues that they need to just keep making her think that everything is fine. She looks down at her fingers and sees the tips are dark gray with black veins starting to run down her hands. Things are finally getting scary.
Yeah.
And we are, I think when I looked at the time, it's 40 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, it's pretty deep in it.
In an 80-minute movie, you gotta get through half of the thing before you start getting them spooks.
It's like slow burn into flash fire because
Mm-hmm.
I mean we'll hear in a moment, but yeah, it ramps up very quickly.
Yep. Cut to a faucet. Zoe tries to put her fingers in the running water, but jumps back like it burned. There's a sizzling sound. She tries again to the same result. She turns off the faucet and looks at herself in the mirror. She curiously pulls back the band-aid on her head. The small round wound has a black ring around it, much larger than before. She puts the band-aid back. As she stands there, thinking, the glass on the mirror breaks like it's been hit, scaring her. She sees her own reflection, scared, but in the broken ring, she is smiling. The two faces move out of sync. Rocky growls as she whirls around, surprised. They stare at each other. Zoe's eyes flutter like she's in a trance again, and then we hear Rocky cry out, followed by silence.
Rocky, no.
He didn't even get to take out Clay.
Poor baby.
Frank is looking at something under a microscope. It looks like a cell being overtaken by black, like we saw on Zoe's fingers. He looks up and sees Zoe, who whispers, "I think something's wrong." Then she pukes up white. It looks like the serum. Frank comforts her, but she says she's not okay. Something is happening. She can hear things and see things, and she's changing. She holds up her hand, but it's normal now. She's confused. She tells Frank that when she died, she went somewhere. The building with the red hallway. He tells her that was a dream from a traumatic experience. She says that's what she thought, but she couldn't wake up. She was stuck, and there was nothing she could do, day after day. Frank tells her she was only gone less than an hour, and she says, "Oh, no. You don't understand. I've been in there for years." Frank again tries to tell her that her brain was failing and she was hallucinating from DMT. It's a bad memory, but it was just playing on loop. Zoe says it was hell. Hell is your worst memory playing over and over and you can't wake up. Frank says she is awake now and she's going to be okay. She nods, but doesn't look convinced. We see Frank give her an injection. She's back to looking shell-shocked. It's to help her sleep. We see Ava covering the now sleeping Zoe with a blanket. She leans in, thinking she heard a whisper. Zoe's eyes move fast under her eyelids. As Ava turns to walk away, she finds herself in the red hallway.
The red hellway.
That was supposed to say hallway.
Fitting.
But you know what?
It fits.
I guess my fast-moving fingers knew what they were talking about because that sure do be the hellway.
It do be the hellway.
All right. She walks down the hallway, looking around in confusion. She hears the pounding on the door at the end of the hall. She calls questioningly, Frank? She approaches the door. Zoe? She hears the screams. She runs up to the door, fearing it's her friends. But as she gets close, those burned hands reach out from under the door and she jumps back. She hears her own voice echo, I shouldn't be here, from earlier. The hands pull back. She turns and sees the little girl standing in the hallway. She asks if she knows where they are. The girl nods but doesn't respond. She's clutching something in her hand. Ava asks what it is. The little girl just puts up a finger to her lip. Creepy child bingo card. The lights go out in the hallway. Suddenly, she's in a blindingly white space, trying to look at a figure that's turning away. We see the dolls burning, and one of the hands grab Ava's arm. She turns, screaming in pain. Ava is waking up on the floor, the team coming in to see what's wrong. She gets up and leaves the room. The team follows. Frank tries to calm her down and asks what happened. She explains that she was somewhere else, the hallway, and she saw the girl. The building was on fire. She heard the people behind the door, could see their fingers. Frank is starting to back away. He knows this story. Nico notices a burn on her arm. Ava says that's where she got grabbed. Clay probes Frank for answers. Frank is in disbelief. He asks Ava if Zoe told her. Ava doesn't know what he's talking about. He insists Zoe must have told Ava about the fire. When Zoe was young, her apartment building caught fire. The neighbors got trapped behind a door, and she still has nightmares about it. Ava confirms it's what she saw. Nico questions how this could be possible. Ava guesses, based off Zoe's theory, that the DMT didn't open the door for Zoe. Her soul got stuck, and she's trapped in her nightmare. Frank says she must be lying. Ava protests, but he leaves. Nico follows him. Nico says they need his help. They don't know what's happening, and Ava's arm was actually hurt. Frank retaliates, asking what Nico wants him to do. He doesn't want to lose Zoe. He asks for help. They part ways. I gotta say, Ava's theory doesn't make any sense. She's like, well, Zoe said, but then she's like, what if the door didn't open? That's not what Zoe said at all. So now you're just spitting random guesses.
Yeah, she's a young student.
I guess I just was confused as to why Nico and Clay were listening to her, because they know she doesn't know about this stuff.
Well, one of them thinks she's hot, so...
True. Clay helps Ava bandage her arm, speaking of which. He jokes to take an Advil, rest, and call him. Ava's still wondering how it really felt like she was there. Clay says it's the serum. It's unlocking the part of the brain that lets you do psychic shit. Ava isn't convinced. Clay explains that evolution happens slowly on purpose. Zoe's brain is doing things it was never designed to do, and it's doing it in mere minutes. We see Zoe asleep on the couch. She's in distress, sweating, shaking, murmuring the Hail Mary prayer. Nico calls to Frank to come see something. He had logged in as an admin and discovered that there's a dummy account that was copying their data and spying on them for months. Frank thinks maybe it's the school. Nico says the school doesn't need to hack. It must be that pharmaceutical company. Frank asks when it was last updated, 20 minutes ago. So they know what they've done. Frank tells them to pack up, grab the dog, they need to leave. The dog is missing, as we know. He's not in the crate. Frank tells them to find the dog and get ready to go. Nico will keep working on the account. They split up. Zoe is trapped in her dream. Visions of fire and whispers. She yanks off her necklace, and it, along with her ring, clatter to the floor. As the music swells, we see her body rise, levitating. Her eyes open, and they are pitch black. There is a high-pitched scream.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Definitely freaked me out in the theater back in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I have a question the movie is not going to answer. Is she possessed? Did she bring something back with her? Or is she just evil now?
I was under the impression that she was possessed by something. Because she says that she's changing.
And she's hearing whispers and whatnot. So that all leans into, like, she's possessed. But also, if the theory is that she never made it to the afterlife because she's stuck in her nightmare, what could be possessing her?
It is a good question.
Yeah.
I still think she's possessed, though.
Fair enough.
Either that or apparently hypothyroidism.
Yes.
Easy explanation.
Her brain is possessing her.
Yeah. You're not you when you're hungry.
Have a Snickers.
Yeah, especially starting out, like it doesn't seem like she's fully on board with everything that she does. And with like the separate reflection in the mirror, it definitely feels like there's some kind of either mental split or some other thing at play. But yeah, it never goes into that.
We will never know one way or the other.
I don't know. The levitating on the couch was a very cool shot, though.
Yeah.
Yes. Nico turns from his desk in the lab. He heard that. He gets up and sees that Zoe is no longer on the kitchen couch. He looks around and hears a thump in the distance. He follows it to the MRI room where the lights are flickering. He calls for Zoe. As he stares at the machine, Zoe appears behind him and touches him, scaring him. He asks what she's doing, and she says she needs his help. She's pleading, saying she needs him to make her feel normal. She touches his face. He backs away, saying she might be confused from the trauma. She says he doesn't understand. He's the only one she can trust. She looks into his eyes and asks for help again. She leans in and kisses him, but he pushes her off, saying no. She says she thought he was her friend. He responds that he is, but she's not being herself right now. He says, we still don't know what's... And she does that thing again where she says what he was going to say as he says it, happening to you. So he says she spent her whole life trying to make up for one mistake. She did everything right, but she still ended up in hell. Nico tells her they can still fix this. They need time. She says it's too late. They have no idea what they've done. She closes her eyes, but they will. She opens them and they're black again. The lights go out. They come back on and Zoe is gone. Nico makes a break for the door, but it slams shut. He can't open it. He says, Zoe, please. Then his body is lifted in the air and flies back into an open metal cabinet. The door slams shut. Zoe steps into view, walking unsteadily. She stares at the cabinet as Nico pleads and struggles. She concentrates, and the cabinet begins to collapse on itself, bending like it's being crushed. Nico calls out one last time, and Zoe flicks her head to the side. We hear a crunch, and blood pours out of the cabinet. Zoe smiles.
He didn't deserve that.
Props to this guy refusing the girl that he's obviously been in love with for a while because he knows better.
And what's that get him? Death.
So sad. Childish Gambino. You a real one. Cut to the rest of the team coming back to the kitchen. Zoe is back on the couch and acts like she just woke up. Frank asks if everything is okay. She says yes and asks what's wrong. Ava asks where Nico is. Zoe says he went to the bathroom. Clay says he was just there. Zoe shrugs. That's what Nico said. Clay is upset now and he starts to pick up the phone to call security. Frank stops him. Clay has had enough of this. He doesn't care if he goes to jail. The last 3 years were for nothing. Frank isn't his boss or friend anymore. Frank says he'll apologize then, but that if somebody finds out what happened here, they'll take Zoe, put her in a lab, and cut her up. Clay says he doesn't know that. Zoe overhears Frank's thoughts. That's what I would do. Clay makes another grab for the phone, and the power goes out. Ava looks at Zoe, who is sitting calmly. Clay is freaking out. Ava asks if this happens often. Clay says there are multiple emergency systems in place, so the phones don't go dead. It doesn't happen. Frank and Clay go out to the hallway. The elevator is dead, and the stairs door won't open. There's no way out. Ava is sitting in the kitchen with Zoe, who stares at her. Uncomfortable, she gets up to go look for Nico. Zoe says she's not wrong. Ava asks what she means. Zoe says she's been thinking, I don't belong here, and she's right. She's not one of them. She just holds the camera. Clay and Frank come back and report that the building is on lockdown. It can do this if a contaminant escape is suspected. Zoe asks about the elevator, and Frank reports they tried but no luck. Ava turns to Zoe and asks, what did you do? Zoe says she's been here the whole time. Ava says she's the last person to see Nico, and all the weird stuff started after she came back. She's getting hysterical and saying Frank and Clay already agreed the serum did something to Zoe's brain. Frank tells her this isn't the time, but she doesn't give up. Clay asks Zoe what happened to Nico. She turns to him, silent. He angrily repeats his question, pointing his vape pen at Zoe as he yells. I don't even know when he got this thing out. It's just suddenly in his hand.
Was it his vape pen or was it a pen?
It was his vape pen, because it has a light on the end.
Pen. Oh.
Anyways, it flies out of his hand, backwards into his mouth. Clay chokes while Zoe smirks and winks at him. He falls to the floor. Frank recognizes it's an obstruction and has Ava grab forceps and a light. Ava holds the light and attempts to help Frank hold Clay still. Frank manages to pull out the pen, but it's too late. Clay is gone. Upon seeing it's the pen, Frank and Ava look at each other and then to Zoe, who has a blank look on her face. The lights surge and then go out. The two freak out. The lights are flickering and they see she's gone. After a few tense moments of them trying to see in the dark, calling out for Zoe and each other to stay close, the lights flicker again and they see Zoe in the middle of the room, her hands outstretched with the furniture levitating around her. Her eyes are black again. They yell and we hear a glass and furniture break. The lights come back and we see Frank crawl out from beneath the overturned couch. He helps Ava up, who was laying in the middle of the floor. They go to the lab to look for a weapon. Frank goes to a drug cabinet and grabs a bottle. Ava is crying that Zoe killed the boys. Frank tries to calm her down, but they hear a noise behind them. A body bag lies on the table. They're in the morgue. The lights go out and the morgue drawers? I don't know what you call those, but you know.
Doors.
Yeah.
The corpse cabinets.
Yeah, the corpse
There
cabinets.
You go. The corpse cabinets. All open. Ava's flashlight goes over the bodies one by one until the one on the table in front of them sits up. They flee. Ava screams that they're coming, they're alive. Frank tells her they're not. He shows her the bottle he took. It's for animal euthanasia. He fills a syringe and orders Ava to hide with the bottle until he's done with it. She doesn't want to split up, but Frank insists that this is his fault and he's going to fix it. But if he can't, he wants her to promise to stop Zoe, not let her hurt anyone else. She promises. Frank apologizes and leaves, ignoring her protests. Ava cries and covers her mouth. We follow Frank as he goes out to the hallway. Zoe is standing ominously under a light, swaying with her head down. He approaches her cautiously, needle at the ready. He says he just wants to talk. The lights go out and come back on. She's right next to him. She asks why he has the syringe then. He puts it down on the floor and tries to reason with her. She's scared and confused, and it's his fault. He wants to fix this. Together. He holds her hands and says he's with her. She asks in her normal voice if he still loves her. He says of course, holding her face in his hands as she sobs. She says, then show me, and holds his head in her hands. We hear his thoughts. This isn't the Zoe he knows, and he has to stop her. She opens her eyes, which are black. You guessed it. We just keep seeing these black eyes like it's going to be a surprise. No, we know. And she says, that's what I thought. Her hold on him tightens, and she focuses. Frank is in pain. He says, Zoe, one last time. He falls to his knees while Zoe lets out a demon screech. His eyes go bloodshot, and he foams at the mouth. The black from Zoe's hands spreads to his head. She lets go, and he falls to the floor, dead. Zoe turns down the hallway, lights going out one by one. On the other end, hiding, Ava covers her mouth to keep quiet. She saw it all. And then we get some, cool techno music.
Mm-hmm.
We watch Zoe go to the lab, and she hooks up that last bag of serum. The lights are flashing white and red. It's almost rave vibes. I'm almost on her side. Yes, girl.
Yeah, go. Do it.
Party. She inserts the arm into her own brain and pumps the full bag of serum into herself. She breathes heavily, and when she opens her eyes, they are somehow even more black than before. Black veins spread across red skin around her eyes. Cut to Ava filling 2 syringes with the drug. She hides one in her boot. Zoe's voice calls out sing-songy for her. She picks up her flashlight and goes out to the hallway. She looks around, trying to stay calm. She sees Zoe's form flit around a corner. The record player scratches and plays that opera song. Ava continues to look around, reaching the kitchen and the record player. She stops it. She calls out for Zoe. Her light starts to flicker, and Rocky's ball bounces out of the lab past her. She calls out again, saying she knows Zoe's there. She enters the lab and pulls out a syringe. Suddenly, she senses something behind her. Zoe is hanging from the ceiling, pale white with her black eyes. She lets out another demon screech. Kind of a cheap scare. Things are really amping up, and then they add in these...
The weird scares.
And that demon screech just sounds so bad, like you were saying. Ava falls in fear and pleads with Zoe, who is now approaching her and reciting the Hail Mary. Had to bring back the Catholic angle. And she doesn't even say the full thing. She just skips to the good part. Pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. And then she force blasts Ava across the room. Ava crashes into the red burning hallway. Zoe is slowly approaching her, but she closes the door. Looking around, she sees little girl Zoe, who is staring at the burnt hands underneath that door at the end of the hallway. She runs to her, recognizing the dream. She grabs little Zoe and looks at what she's clutching in her hand. It's a box of matches. She looks at Zoe, understanding. She whispers, "You did this." Baby Zoe stares at her. Fire crashes through the door further down the hallway. The two watch in fear as adult Zoe steps through, her face burning like paper, ashes flying. She approaches them. Ava tells baby Zoe it wasn't her fault. She can stop this by opening the door. Ava watches in fear as adult Zoe raises her arm to force blast again while baby Zoe opens the door. White light floods into the hallway, and we cut to reality. Ava has plunged her syringe directly into Zoe's chest. Zoe gasps and looks at Ava, normal again. She apologizes. Ava takes her second syringe and plunges it into her neck. Yeah, girl, don't believe that apology.
No.
Double
You
tap.
go.
Exactly. If we learned one thing from Zombieland, it's always
Double tap. Ava slides down the wall in shock. Zoe lays on the ground dead. Sirens can be heard in the distance, and firefighters enter the hallway. One runs up to Ava and asks if she's okay. Ava sobs that she killed them, and he hugs her. Ava looks over his shoulder and sees Zoe's body is gone. The music swells. Ava looks back to her rescuer. It's Zoe. Black eyes demon Zoe. She grabs Ava's head and snaps her neck. Cut to the lab. The bodies of Clay, Nico, and Ava lay on the floor. Nico's body looks suspiciously uncrushed. I just
He
have
looks
to say.
fine. He looks fine. He was not crushed.
He should be a bloody pulp, and he is not. Zoe is putting Frank on the table. She hooks the arm up to her own vein. White serum flows out, and she injects it into Frank's brain. The lights flash red and white. We hear the flatline tone. We hear the surge of electricity, and Frank's body jumps up, gasping. Credits. The Lazarus Effect.
And we never got a sequel.
It feels like a setup, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
I didn't look up any numbers, but I assume this flopped. So a sequel was probably never greenlit.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head canon, there's no need for a sequel anyways, because Zoe wins. No one can stop her. And now she's creating a demon army.
That's true. Although I do wonder, because they said that the lab had been sealed off to prevent contaminants from escaping, are they just living down there? Or were they able to get out? Because in my head, they're just living down there.
I thought she was the one who did it, honestly, and that was like the excuse that they were like, oh no, this can happen, even though she was behind it.
Mm.
Even if that's not the case, though, I mean, she crushed that metal cabinet with her mind, so
That's true. Yeah.
I think she can open that door if she wants.
No problem.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like she was the one that was keeping the elevator from opening. There's also like a fire escape door that just has one of those like push bar latches.
Mhm.
I don't know if you really can lock effectively. They're kind of not well made.
I'm pretty sure it's illegal to lock those anyways.
Yeah, so, and like he's trying to kick the door open, so I think it's definitely like, no, she's keeping him in here.
Demon Zoe.
Iconic.
Demon Zoe.
All right, so that's the end of the movie. Do we want to move into some fun facts?
I sure do.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there's a couple neat ones for this one. So as we stated before, the 10% of your brain, that's a myth. Don't, every time I see that in a movie, I go, that's not, how are we still doing this?
Because it's fun. We're also still, shocking people with flatlines, so...
Well,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, there was a lot of medical science jargon in this one that might as well have just been made the Kessel run in 60 parsecs.
Gigawatts. Yeah. Why weren't they shocking them in...
Well, he called out for joules, which is a universal unit of measurement for energy, but typically it's for like kinetic energy or force. I think newtons is force.
Yes, that doesn't make sense.
So joules is a form of energy, but when you're talking about electricity, you would be using volts.
mm-hmm.
So I don't know why they were measuring a defibrillator in joules, unless maybe my knowledge of how defibrillators work is completely inaccurate, which it very well might be. It's been a while since I've taken a first aid course. So medical jargon and the passage of time and never ending aside, the title of the movie, being The Lazarus Effect, comes from a chapter in the Bible telling the story of Lazarus, a man who was resurrected by Jesus after being dead for 4 days. Specifically in, I believe, the first trailer for the movie, there is a frame flash kind of near the 2/3 to the end mark, citing the specific scripture reference, which is John 11.
That's pretty neat.
Another interesting fact is that Olivia Wilde, the actress who played Zoe, stated in an interview that her character was inspired by John Malkovich's character in the 1988 film Dangerous Liaisons.
Interesting.
I'm not gonna lie, I've never even heard of the movie, but I am interested to see what character performance inspired Zoe.
Yeah.
I mean, John Malkovich being John Malkovich, I'm sure he's probably a little wacky. Speaking of Zoe, the name Zoe is the Greek word for life.
Oh.
Specifically, it's used in a biblical context to mean a divine, spiritual, or eternal life, which is separate from a physical or a human life, in which case the word would be bios.
So what you're telling me is I need to write a story featuring a couple named Zoe and Todd, since we learned that Todd with one D means death in the Final Destination episode.
Yes. Also, I feel like this lends more to her being possessed.
Yeah.
I think they were definitely like trying to lean towards a possession like story, and I don't know if maybe they just had to cut too much footage or what happened.
It is a short movie. There was no time.
Yeah. We gotta keep the script moving. No time for context or explanation.
Who needs it?
Quick, kill Childish Gambino. Do it now.
Speaking of Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, who plays Nico in the movie, is also the singer Childish Gambino, very well known for his role in the TV show Community.
Yes.
This is a interesting piece of context because the potato chips that are seen in this movie are a fictional brand called Let's Potato Chips, which is also featured in the show Community.
Wow.
Oh my god. That is fun.
That is. I won't lie, I've never seen Community.
I've seen it, but not in its heyday. And I did really enjoy it, but I feel like I would have enjoyed it better at the time it was coming out. I still hope they make that movie.
I didn't know they were trying to make a Community movie.
It's been a while, but yeah, they've been trying to make it
It's
for
been
a long
like
time.
years.
They keep saying it.
Hopefully they won't put Chevy Chase in it.
No, they cut ties with him, so
Oh, good.
I don't think he's invited.
Yay. So that is, some interesting trivia I was able to pull up the movie.
It is fun.
Yeah, the potato chips one, that was a very niche poll. I don't think unless you really were watching, you would have seen that one.
Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself, she holds up those chips, and I was like, but Clay was eating the chips, so how do we know that that bag was still on the top shelf?
Yeah, I thought that he was like trying to put the chips back, like, no, I wasn't snacking in the lab, but, like trying to play it off like the dog did it.
Kato deserved the chips.
He deserved treats and proper crediting.
That's right.
Thank you for the fun facts, and now we will move on to the themes analysis. Now, I realize this is a bit of a nothing burger movie, so what did you manage to get for us, Jasmine?
Yeah, look, I've I've really got nothing for this one. It's important to question the ethics of some medical procedures and research. Is this something we really should be doing? Because possibly they could come back possessed by some demon, and do we really want that? I mean, I wouldn't mind myself being possessed, but do we want a world full of possessed people just crushing us?
I don't think so. I think the scientists really do need to consider that, like you said.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've gone through schooling, but I do want to say that the scientific process, you hypothesize, you test, you check for demons, that is one of the core steps.
It's all in there.
It is. Yeah. And there's such rigorous committees and standards and procedures that all research projects have to follow. And if you don't follow that and, you get your stuff taken away, why keep doing it? I don't care if you love her.
In the wise words of Ray Wise, there are consequences to breaking the rules.
Exactly.
Turns out he was spitting facts.
Yeah. Oh no, we got caught doing this thing that we super weren't supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it again.
It does kind of feel like Frank was leading them on, like they didn't know that they weren't supposed to be doing this, only Frank knew, so a little bit in defense of the rest of the team, but yeah,
Yeah.
Frank, full villain.
Well, also, in that case, we need to be questioning the people that we're working for.
It's true. Read your contract.
Read your contract, ask questions.
Yeah, when he was explaining the like, oh, it was an accidental thing that we started following on a tangent series of experiments to the dean, I did not believe him for 1 second. I'm like, this man is just like, yeah, I was trying to resurrect dogs.
If this was an accidental thing that they found, does that mean that they accidentally killed somebody and then somehow brought them back? And that's how they figured this out?
I think the implication was that they were just trying to stop, again, that brain function decay, but the serum that they created to do that ended up, I don't know how they would figure out that it is
Yeah.
good for bringing people back to life. But yeah, that's their explanation anyways. Does it
Yeah.
hold up? No.
No, there's no way to be like, look at this serum I have. Let me inject it into something dead and see what happens. Because nothing could happen. And then what? I think they tested it on a live person and then they died. And then they came back possessed. That's my
Where's
theory.
that person now? Who knows?
Who knows?
They're gonna pop up at the end of the movie when the rest of the demons come up. They're like, hey, I was waiting. Not
It's
very
about
good
time
at
you guys got
planning.
here.
I wasn't sure what you do first with world domination. I don't know. So glad you're here. You're scientists.
Well, I wonder too if that's why Frank drew up I don't know what they were using for the euthanasia.
Oh, another interesting little factoid is in the scene where he's holding the syringe and confronts Zoe, when he sets it on the ground, you can see that syringe is completely empty.
Oh, I didn't even notice it.
Whoopsie doodle.
Again, don't inject air into people.
Well, he is trying to kill her.
He is
Yeah.
trying to kill her. That is true.
Oh.
It does bring up a slightly interesting question of like, why would they have that in the lab? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna try and bring back all these dead animals. What if they come back weird?
That's
Put
what
them
I was
back.
thinking.
Yeah.
I got the impression, because they had a full morgue as well, and there's no way they were approved to do anything with bodies, and you can't just get a body. So I was under the impression that, there are other labs down here, and they just, happen to know what other people are working on and what equipment and supplies they have, and so they were just looting, would be the most fun word to use. They were looting other people's labs.
From the neighboring euthanasia testing lab?
I mean, everything that seems kind of questionable is down in that basement, so yeah.
Yeah, fair.
Also, the morgue.
Yeah, like every college science lab has.
Yeah, why does a college science lab have a morgue?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you.
What is happening here?
I don't know how medical science campuses work, and I'm not gonna look it up. Anyways, moving on, since we are attempting to give a movie too much credit while also bashing it. But let's move on to some reviews, shall we? So at the end, we will give the movie a score from 1 to 5, both on quality and scariness. Then we'll write it a short review off air to be posted on Letterboxd. So let's go into our scary rating for the Lazarus Effect. I am going to say that this movie, again, I watched it at a time when I was super afraid of horror, and I watched it in the theater, so it did a number on me. Do want to be kind to it, so putting myself back in those shoes, I'm going to give this a 3 because the jump scares, while cheap, definitely do work on someone who's not expecting them. And the overall vibe at the end there is pretty dark. So 3 from me.
Gonna get a 3 from me. I was also young and impressionable, and I still am young. So it really did kind of give me a spook when I first saw it, and like you said, the end gets a little dark, a little spooky with techno.
Demon Rave.
I wasn't expecting demon serum power up sequence. That was an interesting one.
That's just a treat for the girlies, you know.
Yeah, treat yourself.
Mm-hmm.
As far as scariness goes, I would actually put this at a 3.5.
Ooh.
I'm particularly susceptible to jump scares. Like, as cheap as they might be, they get me every single time. And they really love doing the person looks through one door. Oh, I guess it's nothing. Oh, it's right behind me. I think that happens like 3-4 times throughout the movie. I startled every single time it happened. I knew it was coming, and it still got me. Yeah, the sequence where Ava is like trying to find Zoe, and she's singing her name out, and the lights are flickering. That built up some pretty good tension, and it went on longer than I was expecting it before a cheap jump scare was, because I knew one was going to happen, but it kept going, and so I was like, okay, when is the jump scare coming? When is the jump scare coming? Okay, when is it? Still no jump scare. Okay, and so I was actually starting to get a little tense, and I'm like, all right, that's good. I like that. Hey, ceiling.
Yeah, so it is a decently scary movie, but now we get to move on to the fun quality rating, which I assume for you guys as well will vary greatly from the scary rating, because I do enjoy the concept, and again, I think this movie is fun. The acting is great, so I do think it's a fun movie to watch, but the plot doesn't hold up, the science doesn't make sense, so I'm gonna give it a 2.
I'm gonna give it a 3, mostly for the acting. The acting was great. I don't feel like most of it held up, and I still do have a problem with the sound engineering of this movie.
Yeah.
I think I will also give it a 2. Acting is phenomenal. All the actors are great. Yeah, the concept. I kind of laughed out loud when she rolled the ball out of the room. I was like, really? That's what we're doing?
Spooky.
Yeah, it's like trying to just trap every trope and cliche into one movie.
Fetch, bitch. No, she was just getting vengeance for Rocky because Ava kept throwing the ball to him even though he didn't want it.
You just kept bopping him on the nose.
Alrighty, so that concludes our ratings. And again, look out for a Letterboxd review if you use Letterboxd from us. We will put up our little review as soon as this episode does air. So I have chosen the movie for next week, you guys. It is the last week of my birthday month. Again, we are recording in the past. We are at the end of March right now. So I have selected for my last birthday pick a movie that I have never seen before, but it's on my why haven't you watched this yet list. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to watch it because I really hope that I like it. People say really good things about it. We're going to be doing Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
I am so excited.
I have seen this a long, long time ago. I really enjoyed it.
So we're going into horror comedy, and yeah, hopefully it's going to be a fun time. Again, we do movies that are currently streaming on one platform or another. And so when I was looking this movie up, I saw that it is streaming on Kanopy. So that's Kanopy with a K. If you do not have Kanopy, I got it for free through my library. So this podcast supports your local library. If you want to get Kanopy for free, go get a library card and see if that is something that they offer as a bonus, because lots of libraries do, and then stream Tucker and Dale versus Evil as well as many other things on the Kanopy platform for free.
We love libraries.
So that brings us to the end of the episode. Dear the Lazarus Effect soul up there, please don't be mad at me because I still love you and I will always love you. I just also love making fun of you.
Don't forget to check us out on socials. They'll be linked down below in the description. And don't forget to give us a rating and a follow.
Thank you for joining us. This has been Scenes, Screams, and Spooky Themes Take 4. That's a wrap.
Cut!